Okay guys, in this next step, I'm just gonna show you a simple technique for adding some raindrop effects to the background that you painted. So this background should be dry at this point, and we can now go ahead and do our next step. So what you'll need for this is a cup of clean water, a paintbrush, and a paper towel or a sheet of like a little square of toilet paper if you don't have paper towels, or a napkin or a tissue. Okay, just make sure that it's not something that's gonna fall apart as you use it. Okay, so for this next technique, I am just gonna get my brush wet, and I am going to flick water using my finger all over the page. And I'm gonna let that sit on there for a little bit. It's okay if it gets on the umbrella, because this should just be plain water at this point. And this step does need to happen before you paint the rest of your picture. You don't want to cover the whole thing in water. You're just going to let it sit here. We're going to let that sit for about 30 seconds to a minute. I can, while I'm waiting for the other parts to sit, I can go ahead and use my paper towel to blot off the drops of water that got on the rest of the painting. And like I said, it should just be clean water, so it shouldn't do anything negative to your painting, because it should just be clean water. Okay, so I'm just going through and drying that off and waiting for the others to sit for about a minute. Okay, so that's been sitting for about 30 seconds to a minute. I will tell you that you're not going to have tons of control over this, so don't worry if things aren't perfect. What I'm going to do now is I am simply going to press straight down. I'm not wiping, I'm pressing straight down and lifting my paper towel straight up. And if we get really close, you can see that there's just a small hint of paint where I have pressed and lifted up. Okay? So I'm just pressing and lifting up. It's not going to make a massive difference as far as the color goes, but this is essentially called a lift, and what it is doing is it's lifting off some of the color from the background before. So I'm pressing straight down and I'm lifting that color up. Okay. And this just helps to create that kind of rain effect of rain droplets coming down in the background. There are other ways to do it, but I think this is the simplest technique for this assignment. The longer the water sits and the darker the paint is, the more of an effect you're going to see. So let's see if I can get really close here and zoom in on a spot for you. Okay, so you can see it's a very light effect, but you are starting to get these little spots on the paper that help create that raindrop kind of feel. Now, if you feel like there's a spot where maybe you don't have as much as you would like, or maybe you didn't let it sit quite as long as maybe you think you should have, because it's water, you can just go ahead back in and spray those little droplets. The other thing you could do is you could take a little brush and just put some little droplets on in places you want it. This is going to be, of course, a different effect, because you're choosing where they go as opposed to the brush randomly putting spots on. So you still want to try and be a little bit random in where you're putting these drops so that they're not all in the same exact spot. Okay, so you're just holding your brush upright and dotting some of those water droplets onto there. Again, we're going to let this dry for 60 seconds to 2 minutes. The longer the water sits, again, the more of the effect you're going to get. I'm going to put some bigger droplets around her feet, kind of like little puddles. This is up to you, whether or not you do that. Because remember, you don't have to do everything exactly as I do. I'm showing you a technique that you can apply to your own painting in your own style. Okay, so I'll let those sit for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to come back and do my lift with my paper towel. So I'm just actually painting on water, letting it sit, and then coming back in with my paper towel to lift those up. So we'll see what this looks like in a minute or two. Okay, so I actually used my phone and set a timer or used my stopwatch to make sure that I let it sit long enough. So I let mine sit for about 3 minutes. I'm gonna go back in with my clean paper towel, and I'm gonna start at the top, and I'm just gonna press down and lift straight up. Remember that we do not want to rub it. It's literally straight press, lift up. Press down firmly, lift up. So this, again, is not going to make a huge, impression. It's just there to add a slight, gentle rain effect. So straight down, straight up. Switch your paper towel. If it's starting to pick up a lot of the blue, move to a clean spot on your paper towel. Make sure the paper towel is dry. Maybe get a new sheet of tissue or whatever you're using. Straight down, straight up. Press firmly, lift straight up. Okay, so we can see that we're getting more of that puddling effect around the feet there. And you can go in and do this as much as needed. However, if you continue to lift paint from the same spot or too close to other spots, you're not going to get much of an effect. So again, this is a gentle effect. I'm going to bring it up so we can zoom in on it a little bit. We can see that we're getting some puddling around her feet, the effect of that, and we're getting some little effects of just gentle rain coming down from the sky. Okay? So before you move on to the next step, you are going to let this thoroughly dry. If you don't let this thoroughly dry, as I've said before, if something happens to be wet, let's say I had some wetness that wasn't fully dry along these edges, and I go to paint it, that paint is going to bleed into the area or spread into the area that's still wet. So I'm going to let this dry, and then we're going to talk about the last step in your painting. So we'll check back in the next video.